Well, we have a fantastic panel today. The topic is future-proof buildings. So, and our panelists are amazing. They have great experience on this topic. So we're just going to jump right into it. I'm going to start with Mike Ellis, who's the Chief Digital Officer at Johnson Controls. Mike, can you give us just a little bit of your perspective on this question and your background?
Hey, Phil, thank you, and thrilled to be here. Future-proof building is all about building, assets that people can operate and execute in and do amazing work in and play in, that also is sustainable and recognizes the outcomes of a great experience as well. And so, it's all about, the sustainability topic. We love that theme of change the world. And that's what this is. And it's in a real estate perspective about how you do it with buildings and do it really well.
And your background has really been software and technology, which is interesting. Could you give folks just a couple moments on that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Phil. So, been in the software and technology industry for 40 years, focused really on helping companies transform how they run their businesses using technology and software. And applying that towards buildings has been an absolute joy and thrill for me, and working with VJ, our CTO, in changing the fabric of how buildings run. So thanks, Phil.
Great, Mike. And next we're going to jump over to Hillary. Give us a little sense of your background and what future-proof buildings means to you.
Great. First of all, thank you for having me join this panel and discussing one of my favorite topics. So I am Hillary Tam. I'm Sustainability Strategy Director at ARM. And my mission there is to really integrate sustainability into everything we do so that we can unlock the value of sustainability for our ecosystem and our entire value chain. So from our suppliers to our customers and our partners. So I'd like to say that my entire academic and professional career has really been making the case that doing good for people and planet is also good for business. So while it's a moral imperative for businesses to tackle their own operational impacts, being able to support their customers to do the same is becoming a commercial imperative. So a bit of my background, I started out just over 10 years ago as a climate and energy campaigner for Greenpeace. So kind of really exerting change externally. And then from there, consulting Fortune 500 companies, helping them identify what their unique contribution is to genuine societal environmental challenges, and now driving change inside at ARM, tapping into what we do best, leveraging our expertise in highly efficient low power compute to really, again, ensure that the underlying kind of technology is as efficient as possible. And I think for me, a sustainable future-proof building, similar to what you were saying, Michael, is buildings that are resilient, that are fit for purpose, but most importantly, buildings that really enhance that human experience. Buildings are built for people by people, and leveraging technology to enhance that, enabling us to do more, but also recognizing that our built environment exists within a natural environment as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Hillary. We love that phrase. Buildings are built by people for people. An amazing statistic, one that I'm not always comfortable with, is we spend 98% of our lives in buildings. So we might as well get it right and have them contribute to a healthy, productive life in a sustainable world. Let's move over to VJ. A little bit about yourself and what does a future-proof building mean to you?
Thanks, Phil and Mike and Hillary, for allowing me to be part of this panel. I'm Vijay Sankaran, Chief Technology Officer for Johnson Controls, and like Mike, an extensive background more on the engineering side at Ameritrade and Ford, and I came from a consulting background. I'm a self-professed techie, having done my undergraduate at MIT in computer science. So technology has always been a passion of mine since I was a young child. Sustainability is also a huge passion of mine, and why this topic is so intriguing and why I joined Johnson Controls. As I think about, our future, next generations, and the impact, that we need to have on changing the dynamics of our planets. The building has such a huge role. After I read Bill Gates' most recent book, a lot of things were eye-opening in terms of the data around what the contribution of buildings are to worldwide carbon emissions. And so, in this space, we, Johnson Controls, and the software behind it have a huge opportunity with OpenBlue to, change the trajectory of global warming and really assist companies in achieving their decarbonization efforts. So for me, future proofing is all about, building the capabilities for our future generations so that, they can enjoy the same clean air and planet that generations before have enjoyed.
It's a great point, BJ. And then I think, to build on that, a follow-up question is, I know that in addition to being a serious technologist, you do take this to heart. Some of your former colleagues have mentioned Mr. Green to me. You've had some fun with the topic. Give us a little bit of that as part of your background.
Actually, it's Green Man, and
I apologize. Mr. Green is a movie character.
It started when I was at Ford, and it involves me putting on a costume all in green with leafy greens on, and going around and pointing out opportunities for environmental improvement in the corporate work. And Green Man has a very signature call, which I'll save for a future video. But I did a lot of videos as Green Man, so I take sustainability to heart.
That's amazing, and I think we will be calling on the Green Man later in some form or another. But I think one of the things that I find fascinating is that all three of you come from what would traditionally be very different backgrounds, but unified on this topic, right? So Mike, having worked on the executive side of software companies and sales and marketing and business development and global strategy, and Hillary, you actually have background as an activist on this topic, and Vijay, you're a hardcore technologist working on the things that are the highest priority to make things happen in the technical world. One thing you all have in common right now is that we're united on working on sustainability and making it a reality in the marketplace. Why don't you each share with us kind of what are your priorities? What are the first things that you're tackling when we say the word sustainability? What comes to mind as something that people need to be acting on immediately? And we can go in any order, but Hillary, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. So I think one of the things that, the biggest challenge facing humanity right now is, of course, the climate crisis. And when we think about the climate crisis, we think about the environment. And the reality is the planet will be just fine. It was fine before us, it'll be fine long after us. But the thing at stake right now is kind of humanity as we know it. So as much as it's an environmental issue, it's really a human issue as well. So for me, it is really thinking about the fact that we are operating in a resource constrained, carbon intense world. And what that means for me is really understanding what we do as a business and how we can not just do less harm, but to be more good and to be part of that solution. And I think buildings, much like technology, can often be seen as a contributor to the challenge, but we know firsthand the transformative enabling powers to actually make what we do that part of that solution. So, hopefully we can talk about this a little bit more, but, what is a regenerative, adaptive, fit for the future building look like? But I think the other side of sustainability, as much as there is that huge focus on environment, again, is going back to that human experience, right? The health and well-being conversation that's not to be ignored, but also the kind of community building, the culture building piece of that. I think COVID has probably shown a light on the importance of human interaction. At the end of the day, we're social creatures. And as we kind of chart a new path forwards with hybrid working, remote working, we really need to understand the value of our built environments in order to facilitate some of that again. So those are kind of the two key themes top of mind. And I think just one more thing, Phil, when you were saying that we spend 98% indoors, we are becoming indoor species. So I think like being able to bring more of that outdoor inside and creating the conditions that really help us not just survive as human beings, but really thrive. I think those are some really big themes.
Yeah, there's some amazingly pragmatic topics when it comes to energy efficiency and clean energy in the building, but some really exciting places where we're pushing boundaries with biophilia and bringing, some of that behavioral part of sustainability and the environment into the workplace. Mike, what are your thoughts about the most immediate priorities for organizations?
Yeah, so firstly, I love what Hillary was saying. That's fantastic. And, and I wasn't kidding when I said earlier, a thematic of change the world, and I think buildings, real estate footprint can be that catalyst to change. I mean, we can do it within our industry sector. We know all about zero carbon and carbon footprint of the buildings and real estate. And Phil, to your point in your question, around how do we really tackle energy reduction in buildings and make them net zero carbon utilization assets, if you will. So, I think coupled with that is that the perception of the building's value is also changing. So, the building owners themselves and the market perception of what is required to continue to value highly those building assets is dramatically shifting. And that's a really good thing. And so buildings themselves and the technology, be it from ARM and JCI and others, that's starting to infuse that change and create that operating platform to reduce that energy usage, to help, catalyze that perception of value change, i.e. a more sustainable, greener building that is, net zero carbon footprint, that is delivering experiences that are dynamic and interesting, that make it attractive for people to operate and integrate and interact together in buildings is the game. And we can do it. And that's what's exciting about this whole, this whole process.
And certainly something we're hearing quite often, right? The time is now.
Yes.
That historically people may have looked at buildings as a bit of a liability on the balance sheet. Now they're looking at them as a huge transformation tool. They can change the culture. They can change their sustainability footprint. They can actually create energy that's given back to the communities that they live in. Micah, you mentioned that it's such an important part of the power equation, right? 40% of the world's energy may be engaged in buildings, and with the solutions that all of you have put together, we can make buildings actually positive contributors. So imagine not only reducing that 40%, but actually eliminating that 40% is a pretty powerful point. BJ, what do you think are the priorities? And you obviously come at this from a technology angle as well as a cultural change angle.
So, for me, I really look at companies, and I think it's all about, if you don't know enough about, your footprint and your consumption, it's really hard to act upon that. And so it's cool to be green, whether you're a consumer, whether you're an employee, whether you're a company, but oftentimes it's about understanding where you are and what levers you can pull. And so, when you look at the platforms that we're all creating, it's really about understanding the consumption in the space, how an employee contributes to the consumption in the space when they come in or out, what are my upstream sources of energy and how they integrate, what are the levers that I can pull in terms of optimizing the energy efficiency of the space. So there's really a process there that companies are eager to take, but they need to understand how to do it. And I think that's where technology really comes into play, is, being able to connect at the edge, being able to ingest the data, being able to perform the analytics, and being able to provide recommendations through AI and ML. So it's so exciting for me as a technologist and a software engineer that we can actually build software to help companies decarbonize and promote sustainability, which is what they want to do. So, I think it's an ideal time where business, technology, and sustainability all intersect in very aligned ways.
And maybe I can jump in there and build on what Vijay is saying, because that's entirely right, especially coming out of COP26. We have seen a fifth of the world's largest 2,000 public companies commit to net zero targets. You know, together they represent over $14 trillion. But the reality is most of those companies do not actually have a plan or a detailed roadmap to actually get there. And the biggest barrier is data, because you cannot manage what you don't measure. So I just wanted to second that.
And if I can jump in, you know, I love this dialogue with Hillary and Vijay. You know, the context of that dialogue, because of what Hillary just said of, you know, everyone's trying to figure out how do you activate against this goal. And in the buildings and real estate world, it's a fascinating convergence of executive leaders within each of these companies, Fortune 1000 and government, et cetera, where you have the digital people, the CTOs, the CDOs, the CIOs, starting to have to go and chat, and vice versa, the heads of real estate, coming together and understanding how do we deploy technology in buildings in a smart, fast, efficient way to start to really exercise this towards the goal of sustainability. And it's actually really exciting. And you're seeing C-suite members having dialogues that they haven't had before about how do we infuse and utilize technology capabilities, smart edge, smart cloud, and all the other applications that go into, you know, the intelligence of understanding how you optimize a building, and bringing that together between these executive suites. It's really, really great to see.
Yeah, but I think, and I think if you build upon that, I think what I would add to what Mike and Hillary said is maybe focusing a little bit around sort of the barriers is, you know, people sometimes don't really know what actions to take, right? That's really, it's not a lack of desire to take actions, but buildings are very complex, right? You know, you have chillers operating, you have, you know, HVAC units, you got complicated sensors. So just being able to say, do this, right? Making a recommendation, or saying, hey, if I wanted to do a solar grid on my site, what is that going to generate? How is that going to change my pattern, right? So we have to like create solutions that are easily consumable, not just to the PhDs and scientists, but, you know, to people who are, you know, owning and operating your local McDonald's or Residence Inn, right? It's like, how do you make it so simple that, you know, you could hold it on a mobile phone and look at, you know, your optimization recommendations, right? That's what our job has to be as we go forward into the future. Otherwise, this becomes that much harder to do. And so that's what's so exciting, is that, you know, when Steve Jobs brought, you know, the Apple to the world in 1984 and made personal computing so easy, that's what captivated me. And, you know, we need to do the same thing for, you know, the digital sustainability space here.
It's great. So what I'm hearing loud and clear, time is now. It's a good time for the balance sheet. It's a good time for attracting customers, and it's a good time for attracting employees to fully embrace the sustainability agenda. The world's out there, they've made commitments, but they're not sure how to do it. So as you go in, you're saying, Vijay, grab the data, understand your footprint of the complexity of your carbon footprint, and get your hands on some of these consumable solutions, things that people can do right now. And let's talk about those. What are those solutions? What are things that people are using and engaged with? You know, if we talk about VJ OpenBlue, for example, at Johnson Controls, what are some of the things that you're looking at that can be done now to help someone reduce their carbon footprint?
Well, I'm really excited about, you know, what we've done with OpenBlue Enterprise Manager, which is your single pane of glass across the enterprise, and we're building in, you know, OpenBlue Net Zero Advisor as a module as part of that. That is really your, you know, you could say digital advisor for sustainability, you know, in your building space. So, you know, with OpenBlue, we know we're focused on collecting all of the data as well as third-party data around energy consumption across the enterprise, and then providing a set of insights and analytics around carbon production, via OpenBlue Enterprise Manager. And then within OpenBlue Net Zero Advisor, we're going to take that to the next level and be able to do simulations as well as bring in third-party data sources from upstream energy producers as well as local production of energy to do actual projections around how you can do things like load shaving, be able to repower your batteries to kind of optimally manage your carbon footprint. And as part of Net Zero Advisor, it also allows you to put in what your target is for net zero carbon so that you can understand, what you can do to reduce your carbon footprint through your own actions, but then potentially also setting up potential for carbon credit exchange, as well as being able to use the markets to be able to achieve those net zero objectives. And so you can think of it as OBEM and Net Zero Advisor being your single pane of glass for our sustainability efforts going forward, underpinned by our OpenBlue platform. So I'm really super excited about that, because we can really bring transparency, to the enterprise.
Okay, great. And Hillary, how does ARM fit into this equation? I mean, it's such an amazing company, providing technology, at the device level, at the edge, in a chip, and advising people on how to build the technology. How do you feel ARM is making things happen right now?
So that's a great question. And I think it really goes back to my role there as Sustainability Strategy Director, which is really understanding what our core capabilities are and how we can leverage that towards answering a genuine challenge, climate change. We didn't start off thinking that we would necessarily save the world or address climate change 30 years ago with that top of mind. Our origins in mobile has led to us being longstanding experts in kind of that low power compute space. And I think, again, what we were talking about earlier, which is we know that technology has a huge role to play. I think there's stats around how 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions, that can be just tackled by fine-tuning existing technology and making devices a little bit more intelligent. And so it goes back to that question of making sure that the underlying technology to these solutions are as low power and as efficient as possible, so that the benefits of technology aren't outweighed by the additional footprint of additional compute. So I think that's where ARM has a really unique role to play. And I think where we are in the ecosystem, but also where we are in the value chain by design. And I think we can kind of relate to that when we think about buildings, which is 80% of environmental impact can be determined at the design phase. So it really, you can get a sense of the kind of power and responsibility to really think about sustainability and energy efficiency and decarbonization from the very start.
It's amazing. And Mike, I know you have a lot to say around getting involved early in design for sustainability. Why don't you weigh in on that topic?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Phil, and well said, Hillary. The building life cycle itself and how we infuse technology with outcomes as a focus. So sustainability, experience, healthiness, all those kinds of things needs to change. I mean, we need to actually, as Hillary said, all the way from the early design phase, take that into account. But importantly, all the way through that architect and build and construct and then operate and maintain cycle, we need to have that level of focus on those outcomes. Today, it's still a historical process of a fairly fragmented build process for large buildings. And I think, it's going to mandate, to Vijay's point of, what are our hurdles and obstacles? This is one of them. How do we help the industry itself start to morph and understand that design process with an outcome-based goal and maintaining that outcome goal all the way through that cycle of build? And of course, what could be more important than green and sustainability and experience of the people that are occupying those buildings?
And maybe just to jump in there, buildings emit carbon in two key ways, right? One, when we build them and the kind of embodied carbon and all the materials that it takes to get a building off the ground, and then also when we use them. And some of the kind of trends we're seeing in sustainability is thinking about the circular economy, right? Where you're trying to design out pollution and waste and keep things at its highest utility for as long as possible. And then, you know, that regenerative nature that I was talking about. So almost thinking about even the kind of deconstruction and demolition phase, like if we had more visibility and just understood the data of the materials and how they travel through this kind of you know, from design from demolition to design to build to operational management, like that's an incredible journey to be able to have a bit of a handle on and visibility of how we can manage that better as we drive a circular economy forward.
Team, great overview of the situation. What is the technology that excites you most right now that people should have on their minds as they look at their buildings? Hillary?
So I guess I would answer this question going back to a lot of the technology we are seeing right now is really around managing our impact and our footprint. But I think the direction that these kind of technologies are really paving the way for is, again, that kind of more good space. So we have seen things like technology being applied to things like cleaning stormwater runoff, or building facades that sequester carbon and clean the air, and buildings that serve as small scale energy resource for surrounding communities. So I think that idea of not just using less resources, but replenishing and giving back to the natural environment that our built environments exist within, that's super exciting for me, because I think one of the stats that always stands out to me is around 50% to 70% of buildings that will exist in 2030 have yet to be built, right? So if we think about, you know, the future and, you know, what's going to happen, it's not just going to happen to us. It's up for us to define, much like technology. Again, you know, these are things that with, you know, keeping top of mind, if we're able to, again, from the very start, build in this idea of resilient, you know, climate adaptable, climate mitigating buildings that are inclusive and comfortable, and, you know, environments that will allow us to do well and reach our full potential as we live, work, and play in them. I think that is the kind of most exciting prospect for me, and we're really kind of reframing that challenge to be one of the greatest innovation opportunities of our time.
Love it. Very well said. Vijay?
So as a technologist, I have to, I guess, come up with a technology-focused answer. But I would say, you know, without a doubt, in this space, artificial intelligence and machine learning, you know, has the power to change everything. And, you know, if you have the right data, you can put the right models in place. You just can provide so many different options for organizations around how they want to approach things. And so a great example is we just launched our OpenBlue Performance Advisor, which gives optionality for enterprises in terms of how they manage ventilation in a space, but also understand what impact that has on energy consumption. And so, you know, then you can see a world where if a space has less individuals occupying it, you know, maybe you orient that optimization in one way versus, you know, when there's an event in a space and you optimize it the other way. And so that's all done through algorithms. And so in my mind, I've always believed that algorithms have such power, and they'll continue to have even more impact in everything that we do.
Fantastic view. Mike?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of a combination of what Hillary and Vijay said, which I love. You know, think of it, in my perspective, as the perfect storm, but the perfect storm in a good way. And so, you know, here we are where we're experiencing the cost of compute, the cost of technology at the edge, the cost of cloud and the build of applications, and how that has been reduced over the years, that it's executable, while at the same time we're seeing a revolution about what matters when it comes to buildings and real estate. So sustainability and net carbon zero and experience and healthy air and all of those things for people to really understand why this is so important. So the perfect storm being that the needs and the desires of the market have truly resonated with, we need to change the way we run buildings and operate in buildings and live in buildings. And we need to utilize the technology in a totally different way to make that achievable in a totally different way in terms of the outcomes that we're after. So sustainability, of course, et cetera. And so what a wonderful time for us to be talking about this topic and bringing together not only this vision of what we aspire to around buildings and their give back to community and society, in terms of what Hillary said, the future view of what buildings can be and how they can operate, and what Vijay said around the technology and artificial intelligence and capabilities at the edge and cloud. Couldn't be a more exciting time.
Great. Well, thank you all three. You have such a fascinating perspective on what is truly an urgent issue, and optimistically the notion of how we can use technology in buildings and bringing constituents from activism, from the software industry, and from technology suddenly working on something like a building, a smart autonomous building, is a remarkable development. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll encourage anyone watching this video to reach out to the team or to a speaker you may have heard that you are interested in following up with. Thank you very much.